I truly let myself down by allowing others to downplay my strengths in my life. And at the same time as that, there was a calculated poisoning going on with my body from my brothers growing up. But what they need to realize is that I'm somebody too. And so in this message, I'm just going to tell a little bit of my story. I hope that you'll pay attention. It means a lot to me to have you here. And I need you to know from the beginning to where I'm at. And so I want to try and get out as much of my story from the beginning of being poisoned all the way up until 43 years old. So at first I was poisoned up by my dad. It's in my findings and discovery that this was done so that he could get away with the rape and molestation. Next is I was poisoned up by my own brothers because they were called into the psychological abuse right away and into the abuse itself. So I was poisoned multiple times, finding myself out of my availability of being able to speak multiple times through my life, like legitimately, like there's like a blockage that happens with the calculated poisoning. Arsenic is what I believe that it was, 2000%, but my ability to think was scrubbed out of me in a fashion where I wouldn't have known at multiple times that I was missing anything at all, whereas later in life it became something is happening to me that I can't see happening to me. And then it became where my mind was making up its mind that like you legitimately can't get out your feelings or your emotions because of something that these people did to you, just like it has always been. So next was realizing that through that abuse, I needed to figure out a way to get away from these people without letting them know, because they weren't letting me get away at all. They weren't letting me work. They weren't letting me have an organic relationship. All organic relationships were determined basically right away. They didn't want me to be loved. So the energy efficiently is what told me to the core of me that it was something that they did to me, and I'm commenting on the facts, or I would be commenting on the facts, and I would confront them, telling them that they were hurting me, and they would suggest that they're not doing anything to hurt me. And I said, no, you don't get to tell me that your actions aren't hurting me when I'm very specifically telling you that your actions are, as a matter of fact, hurting me. So I would be telling them that they didn't otherwise have the right to tell me that they weren't hurting me, because I was being hurt, and I was being hurt badly. They were working in stages against me, manipulating me, love bombing me, to then get the poison into me, and then backdrop, and then draw back, and then the cycle would repeat. So next I was growing up that way, wanting to get away, not knowing or even remembering that I had anything to get away from at times because of the poisoning. When I did realize that I wanted to get away and I wanted to run away, the police brought me back home. Next thing you know, I would be poisoned, and I would forget the reasons that I wanted to run away in the first place. Or maybe not forget, but you just get so like caught up in the cycle of abuse that it's just super depressing. You're like, I don't understand why these things are happening to you or happening to me. So it was just being hurt in calculations of their interests, to moments later not even remembering the hurt, rather feeling the hurt, but not knowing what to do with it, and unable to speak my thoughts multiple times, like I've said. I was trying to, but hardly even being able to speak. Say you need 12 words and you're able to get 2 or 5 out. It's just not enough. Next I would, in that sentiment, I would be like they would downplay what was happening to me so badly that they would be manipulating others or jumping into the middle of the conversation and cutting me off. So they would cut me off from being heard from anybody around. Next, I was almost kidnapped 3 times by the age of 11 or 12, maybe. It was Danny Heinrich, and I didn't know that at the time. I learned that being homeless in the homeless shelter, also being hacked and trying to secure my phone from a hacker right there in the homeless shelter. So having this proxy friend, hacker, show up at the shelter to take me, anywhere that we could go, was as well to continue that poisoning, as I was already being lost inside of this character assassination and emancipated in a feeling from my own body and my mental clarity. So the identity theft was a total takeover of my life. Mind you, Jacob Wetterling and I share the same birth date, only he was a year older than I am, where I'm a year younger than he is. And he was kidnapped, and then I was almost kidnapped, so it would have been the same time frame of being out and supposedly free from the last time I would have almost been kidnapped. And I learned that it was Danny Heinrich, basically seeing his face on the TV screen in the homeless shelter, and I believe wholeheartedly that these hacks were to try and stop me from being able to even know this or figure this out. But it was very triggering. They did so much to hurt me that I can't even suggest to how they have been trying to murder me in all actuality of it, but that's the reality of it, and I'm tired of this evil energy. It's been non-stop inside of my life. I was a young boy, and I was growing up that way. I didn't have a chance for my mind to develop free from this abuse, free from the stalking of my father, to being free from this way that would be trying to kidnap me and get me in trouble, serious trouble in my life. So I was being poisoned up at a friend's of ours when Jesse would come to pick me up. I would feel the same things that I felt as I otherwise would at a friend's place. I'm not going to mention her name. She knows who she is. I had my stuff at her house. So the stuff that I had at her house, I got out prior to losing it, which was the last of which being the storage unit that I was never allowed to basically work by the hacking and by the identity theft and by the hijacking of my reality in that fashion of just not knowing how to move, how to get away from basically fighting ghosts of people that were working to control my life to ensure that I was going to be long injured inside of this way, to basically create the insecurities in my life financially and to totally sabotage my ability. So I hope that I can get your support, because it's very important to me what has gone on. After being positioned into a mental health unit, I was made homeless, suggested by my brother that we were going to figure it out. I was going to get a job and I was going to be able to find an apartment or whatever. But that was never the goal that he had in mind. Rather, it was only to control me and the way that people saw me, including his own children. And it was to continue the proxy warfare as if I was their property, as if I was my brother's property. And this is just too intolerable of a psychological abuse and torture to be able to move up away from, when at the same time you're being poisoned again, placed inside of a mental health facility where a guy there was as well set up to goad me on to fight him just to keep me in there longer, and I knew it. And I also had a lady in there telling me that that's exactly what this guy was trying to do, and that's what they did. That's what they were doing to me. She saw right through it. Said that don't do anything to this guy. If you do, they're gonna keep you here longer. It's like I'm right on the same page with you, sister. So they were creating the avenues that they needed to suggest to the courts to create me to look like I was the perpetrator and not the victim. But I've always been the victim of this instigation and this agitation to ensure that I was going to be made to look as an unstable person, or as though I was a danger to myself or others as their goal. So next I was being made into a homeless shelter where that same proxy friend hacked me further, poisoned me further, and a few days inside of that place as well, I almost felt like I was going to die multiple times to suggest of how arsenic works. You can't speak it out for what you're feeling, and at the same time it's trying to take your life because you literally can't breathe down to your cellular level. And that's why you can't use your mind. That's why you're not able to talk. That's why you're not able to suggest to how these things work, but that's exactly how arsenic works. From my studies is exactly what the triggering points are that tell me that over and over repeatedly, like multiple events in my life, that's exactly what was being used, on top of there being many breadcrumbs that these arsons left behind, and how they used me, how they abused me, how they poisoned me up, and really, really nicely. So this was a repeating thing in my life. I couldn't get away from it, and I was realizing that at very short times throughout my life that I needed to get away from it. But being poisoned, you have these memory lapses and forgetting that you even had anything to run away from moments later, from realizing you had something to run away from. So next you're like Stockholm Syndrome, going back to the people, going back to the perpetrators, looking for the help from the perpetrators themselves, not knowing that they are the perpetrators anymore. So next, in the homeless shelter where Jesse took me to Missouri, this was a proxy, if you ask me, designed to, bring me there, ask me some very pertinent questions regarding cameras there. If there was cameras, like asking me, do you think that they have cameras around here? And I was like, well, I'm sure that they want to look over their property, no matter who's on their property. And I'm sure if a bear or something was gonna eat a human being, that they'd want it on camera. So yeah, I think that they would have multiple cameras all over this place. But I remember thinking it specifically being that he was asking me if there's cameras around for an alternative reason. And that alternative reason was to, like, in my mind, murder me and leave me there. But then you're also poisoned up, and you even forget those things right there in the scene of, like, he's supposed to be your friend, you just move on. But it was moving on against my own better judgment, because my better judgment would not have wanted to stay there with him, and would not have wanted him to be in my life from as early as 17 years old onward. So he was never my friend. He was always a proxy meant to pervert my life in this way and work me out of myself, to work me against my better judgment. Mind you, multiple times at this point where I had wanted to get away from that warfare that Jesse was towards me, who I'm calling the proxy. He's the proxy, he's the hacker, he's a very abusive person. He has psychologically manipulated me. He's had affairs all over my life with intention to psychologically ruin me in the worst ways, and these proxies were by control and by design. I know how it sounds to the normal public, but I'm actually speaking the truth. So, as well as my own brothers poisoning me, there was others as I grew up, just like I've said. And so, I really hope to aim for your support in this, because it's just, you barely make it through, you're barely alive, and then next thing you know, they're coming for your job. They're coming to hack your phone so you can't work a gig app. They're coming to literally create a second account in a gig app community with your phone number, so you have to move to create a whole new number. You have to move to do things, and now that you do that and you secure that part of it, now they're coming for the actual availability of your car. And then on top of it, the health and human services aren't trying to help me with general housing assistance money or cash assistance, where I should be able to get both of those on top of EBT, SNAP benefits, and on top of the medical care. So going back here, I barely made it out of the homeless shelter alive when I was ghosted out so many times, floated out of my ability to reason so badly so that if I had stayed there, I know that I would be alive to tell it for what it is. And there's multiple times that are just like that where I wouldn't have been able to make it out alive. So I'm trying my hardest to get my story heard by somewhere that has heart to hear it and make my story matter to them, because it should matter, and it should matter to the police, but the police aren't doing anything. And I believe there's a heavy syndicate that's at play here. A really heavy and really large syndicate that has to deal with trafficking, that has to deal with kidnapping, that has to deal with these people going missing, quite honestly. And it has a lot to do with my story here, where the heart of the story should matter. And quite honestly, I'm hoping that it would matter big time, because this isn't no small time event in my life, rather a lifelong, whole lifespan of targeting and controlling my life, my friends, my ability to love, my ability to perform jobs, and my ability to even have a job. And this was all done in order to prevent me from having any kind of love life or any kind of value in my life of a normalcy at all, to return to somehow get out of the situation and return back to my own normal life of love. So the psychological warfare continued throughout my life. I need help that I don't believe people can even see, to the help that's out here that there is. So that's why I'm asking you personally if you can help me. I know how it reads within the poisoning now, so I know I looked anxious or on edge when it reads to me as that was a calculated poisoning against my better judgment, or how it was made to look like I was eroding and an explosive factor in my life, like I was just exploding. But the fact of the matter is I was reacting to the abuse that was being placed in my body that I couldn't understand at the time. But again, it was a poisoning against my better judgment. And this cycle went in repeated patterns, poisoning with real actual poisons, with real actual intents of these people to perform identity theft, to poison up my reality, not just poison up my body, psychologically torment me, and put me in this strange covert warfare of spiritual warfare, where my love life, my work life, my home life, you name it, it was poisoned. The Lord tells me in my spirit that I would be blessed if I could get your help out here to go back into the stages of where I could actually develop whatever life that I have left to live. But if I can't get your support there, then I'm truly fucked, because the syndicate is large, and it involves the people that are supposed to be protecting the crimes. They take oaths for their oaths of office, but they aren't working in their oaths. Rather, they're working in the synagogue of Satan, or this trafficking community, so that they can deceive people, that they can work in this occultist type of design while is at the same time working their normal job and getting paid this non-governmental organization payment from these donors and supporters that are supporting the artistry of kidnapping children, trafficking children, and all my life I've been being trafficked regardless of what it looks like on the outside. It's much like being inside of an open-air prison system. So that it looks to other people as though you're crazy, because that's what it's to do, is like legit make you crazy. So after the shelter, I was going through things in my life where I was fighting to survive in ways that I couldn't even put into words. I was going to work feeling so drained, as if just beyond fatigue. It felt like I was carrying 10 of me, at least, to just stand up and walk out the door, do anything that I had to do. It was the most heavy feeling that anyone could ever imagine feeling the heaviness of. So I was praying every single day, because I didn't know what I know now, and I was still trying to figure out through that covert warfare, and at those times I literally couldn't feel okay, and I would just be going through an immeasurable amount of pain, trying my hardest not to have to go sit down at work for 5 or 10 or 15 minutes. So oftentimes that I felt like I absolutely needed to, I would just be dealing with what I knew was a calculated attack on me. I just couldn't understand it beyond being covert warfare, but it was, again, against my better judgment, a calculated poisoning. Every time Jesse was around, being at work, being, coming over to my apartment, coming over anywhere he was around, if and when he did bring me a drink, or I had a drink, or I had some food, or I'd go to the bathroom and come back. That happened in St. Paul Park, where that was the first time I saw it, and I just didn't understand it already, because I had worked so hard to have this food in front of me, and he just played it off like, oh, no, I wouldn't do anything like that to you, man. But then moments later, I was completely slipped out of myself, to then having my brother come up around the holidays, stirring something into the Metamucil, and I took it one time, and I felt completely wiped out of my way. And then just trusting that your brother wouldn't do something like that to you. I took it another time, and I literally almost died right there in the St. Paul Park house. So now they're trying to call me crazy because I have an inclination of, like, at this time, like, how many attacks? 80, 90 attacks that, like, all calculate to, like, this is a calculated poisoning to get me into the coldness of the very thing that would, the very feeling that would set within anybody, and just send chills down your spine to know it. I mean, if you were able to look at all sides of my life, him to me, Jesse to me, my other brother to me, my dad to me, how the system is working, how the shit camp design of masonry or Freemasonry or this occultist, like, sex trafficking kids, like, if you were to know all of the parts and pieces of this, of how it's been affecting me, it would literally send chills down your spine to know it, to hear it, to feel it, as I am now. I'm, like, completely frozen with what to do, because of it being 2 steps forward and 3 steps back, 2 steps forward and 3 steps back, 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. And then there's just no going forward. And I'm telling the truth about what I'm going through. And it's more like, 2 steps forward and 19 steps back. 7 forward and 36 back, at times. So, like, if you can even get 2 steps forward and 1 step back, it would be progress. But it's more or less 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. You see what I mean? So like you're coming for, you get what I'm saying. There's just no getting out from under if these people just want to completely decimate my character, decimate my life, not allow me to work, not allow me to love, not allow me to performance in my work, not allow me to have a phone that's not being hacked, allow me to have actions that I can take to get out from under. And then it's just if they take their fingers off, right? Like they hacked your phone, they hacked your social media, they got this, they got what they needed, then they take their fingers off while they instigate the police to say there's nothing to see here. You know what I'm saying? But it doesn't mean that the fingerprints weren't there. Anyway, so it's like there's just no getting out from under when they're putting chemicals and poisons in your work. They're administering things into your body. Assuredly, if people knew the parts in play here, I'm always asking, what's the next move? Like, what do I do? Like, can you offer me any kind of supportive advice? Can you send a UFO to me to go to Mars and live with some aliens? Can you give me a donation with the healthy ticket going to Romania to live with Andrew Tate? For a little while, like, is there something I can do? You know what I mean, is what I'm saying. But I just don't know what that is. But I in my mind and in my ability of thinking what has happened to me, I legitimately need a blessing as a huge donation to not only if I'm able to just continue living here at all, fighting, then I need all of the stuff that they've caused for so much blight in my life to be paid for, where I know for myself that all of this stuff would be paid for if I'd just been left alone to work and not within another proxy relationship, following a proxy relationship, being 2 blocks away from my murderer friend. And people can think whatever they want, but he's definitely a demon in disguise and has been a demon in disguise in my life for a very long time. I even personally believe that he was instigated and set up by my very own dad, which is why he had a longer interview at McDonald's when my brother was the manager interviewing him, and it's just a job that Jesse Lee would never do. And so it's just weird all the way around. It's this syndicate type of behavior that's followed me no matter what I'm doing in my life, to prevent me from love, prevent me from my finances, prevent me from getting out from under. And they need to call it mental health. When I go in asking, well, before we discover mental health with absolute no tests, like no tests on my brain, like they literally have brain scans that would probably prove my brain is colorful as all get out, but they wouldn't be able to actually determine by the colors that it's schizophrenia, depression, anxiety, or any of that, right? But these tests are actually super duper expensive, and then the cheaper route would be just treating the physical body, drawing out the blood, finding exactly what metals are in the body, which they do have tests for, but instead they're trying to ignore my body and not do any of the tests that are available, and instead just suggesting that's all it is. That's all you're seeing is a mentally unsound person being mentally unsound, and it's just a crock of shit. So anyway, I know that there's people out here that understand this stuff. I'm just trying to help you guys understand it better, because it's been my whole entire life, and if I was able to actually get the words out in a very descriptive manner, there's no denying what I'm saying being true. And furthermore, people aren't going to be able to deny their Father in heaven, the Creator. And so I'm just looking for your support, and I'm hoping that you can share my work with others and that I can get out of this very unnatural way of life. Thanks for being here.